That's right, you're getting the Razor Ramon Val Venus poolside final series breakdown video. Because as I told you guys, if you do me those favors, you comment on videos, you like, you share the videos, I'm going to do those things that you request. This is a sniff my back. I don't like the way this saying is going, but something like scratch my back and I'm definitely not going to sniff yours type of philosophy I saw on a bunch of those previous videos. You guys needed that Panthers Lightning series breakdown, and I was intending on doing it. I cranked out as many videos as I could, but I obviously had some Easter plans, had to go see some family. And I didn't have time to get that last one in, but because you guys, you spoke and I listened, and don't get used to that because it's not always going to happen, but so many of you wanted to see the series breakdown on the Panthers and the Lightning. So by golly, you're getting that poolside Val Venus in Florida, so I can just feel what's going on. Does it smell like a little Tampa series, or does this smell like a Florida Panthers series? These two teams, many consider to be the favorites in the East, and I do not disagree. I think that if Tampa or Florida played anyone in the Metro, they'd breeze their way to the conference finals. And then I would take both of these teams next round over Toronto. So these are two potential Stanley Cup teams who are forced to play each other in round one, kind of like the Stars and the Avalanche and like the Golden Knights and the Stars last year, just because of the way the playoffs are structured. But this series is the fourth time that these teams have met in the playoffs in the last 5 years. And both of these teams have made it out of the East 5 straight years. So you're looking at the last 5 Eastern Conference champions playing in this series. The first 2 series went to Tampa, and then obviously, as you saw the balance shift, last year went to Florida as they won the Stanley Cup. What's a little bit different this year? You have a kind of rejuiced Tampa team. They got rid of Stamkos and brought in Gensel. That was something they were lambasted for at the time, but that's why it's always better to be a year early on a player than a year late when it comes to re-signings and who you want to bring on your team. And let me tell you the most important factor by a mile in this series. Everything else is null and void after this first factor that I'm about to bring to your attention. Matt, what do you think it is? What's the most important thing in this series by a mile? And I may not have the sweet chin board, but I do have a big black marker and pieces of paper. By far, the best playoff goalie I've ever seen play in my life. I've seen the John Jaguar run. I've seen every quality goalie. And I'm not going to talk about the old days when goalies used to stand up and just, kick their feet out at the puck. I'm talking about true tradition. I've seen the Waz, I've seen the Hasiks, I've seen them all. Lundqvist was right up there. But the best goalie I've ever seen when he's playing at the top of his game, and the one who just looks unbeatable, like a monster, like you created that video game character who just is too big and it's almost like a cheat code, Andre Vasilevskiy. As you saw yesterday with Connor Hellebuck, he just don't have that dog in him. There's just nothing going in. My younger brother and me, we call it the magnet. Go watch the Florida-Tampa series. I alluded to this I think it was in an interview I did. Not the last one, but the previous one, where the Panthers won the President's Trophy. We're called the Cardiac Cats, had one of the best offenses of all time. And I think they scored a grand total of 3 goals in the entire series because Andre Vasilevskiy was simply unbeatable. No matter what they did, they could not beat him. It's when he's on his game, he's number 1, and then Shesterkin's close by at number 2, and then everyone are miles down the road. He can win this series by himself. Tampa, I'm about to ask some questions of them. They can do every last thing that I talk about here in this preview. And sorry if you hear some wind. It's honestly a nice thing because when you're in Florida, you need as much wind as you can get. This gets real swampy, so much to the point that alligators hop into people's pools. You ever see those videos where somebody sees an alligator in their pool in the backyard? Are you nuts? Are you nuts? No, that would never be me. Anyway, Andre Vasilevskiy is by far the most important factor in this series. Anybody who's going to try to say, I heard some godforsaken analyst say that, Vasilevskiy, Bobrovsky, that's a wash. Are you nuts?
Now you want to get nuts?
Are you legitimately nuts?
Come on, let's get nuts.
3 tiers higher is what Andrei Vasilevskiy is. Bobrovsky didn't even start the playoffs 2 years ago. That's how poor he was during the regular season. He wasn't even the starting goalie come playoff time. Can you imagine saying that about Andrei Vasilevskiy? But as you can imagine, after 3 straight Stanley Cup appearances, remember how I talked about how Edmonton played essentially an extra season over the course of 3 seasons? Well, the Tampa Bay Lightning, with their repeated playoff success and how many full Stanley Cup finals runs, they were beaten and worn down. Vasilevskiy had back surgery, and now he's a few years removed from that. And as you saw, by the end of the year, he was only under Connor Hellebuyck under regular season stats. Something tells me his postseason stats will once again be better than Connor Hellebuyck. So him, to me, he can decide the whole series. Tampa can get outplayed every single game, and Florida cannot answer the questions I'm about to ask of them, and they can still win because he is that good when he's on. So Andrei Vasilevskiy. And when you ask me, what kind of questions are you asking of the Panthers? Well, there's one pretty obvious one. Nice Florida win, huh? The Panthers' health. Now that I don't need this, I could just literally wing it. But I'm not going to do that. I will not pollute. Do you imagine somebody's just taking their dog for a walk, and this comes blowing? The Panthers' health just comes blowing right by their face. Obviously, the Panthers are going through that same thing I was just talking about. They've been on multiple Stanley Cup Finals runs, and now they're showing the wear and tear, and that you cannot go this deep in the playoffs multiple times without showing the wear and tear. It happens to all of them. It's happened to Vegas after multiple runs, happened to the Lightning, even Islanders back-to-back conference. You go to like 2 straight conference finals, you're crusty. And you're seeing it with Dallas, back-to-back conference finals. Injuries were piling up this year. Heiskanen, Robertson, Sagan. It's just what happens when you play that many games. Did you watch day 1? Did you see how intense? Some of that, it's not regular season hockey. It's a different brand, and it wears on you. So the Panthers have shown the effects of that. Multiple injuries, multiple key stars missing lengthy amounts of time. We've seen Barkov miss several periods of time. Obviously, Matthew Tkachuk missed the entire rest of the season after the 4 Nations. That wasn't the only time he missed games. He missed games earlier in the year. We obviously seen Sam Bennett rested, or maybe he was dealing with an injury. A lot of these Panthers were either strategically rested or still dealing with injuries toward the end of the year. So what's the status going to be with all these guys? Like, is Matthew Tkachuk coming back early simply so he plays? Is he going to be at full health? Are the whole Panthers going to be at full health? Because considering the style of hockey that they play, you can't get a watered-down version of the Panthers. The Panthers, when they're at their best, are the best team in the playoffs. It's not even a question. When they have that vicious forecheck going, and they have their skill players doing what they do, it's just brutal to play against. They give your offense nothing, while their offense has a bunch of high-level playmakers. So that's a pretty tough mix for any opponent. So when the Panthers are at their best, they would be favored in this. If you were guaranteed that every Panther was 100% fine the way the Lightning are, Panthers would be favored in this series, and I would pick the Panthers in this series, unless Vasilevskiy decides to do it all on his own. That's why this is so fascinating. So let's just say that the Panthers are healthy. Let's say they did all their strategic resting, and their coach, he knew we've had multiple runs, and it was just precautionary. They precautionarily held out Sam Bennett and Barkov and gave Reinhart some rest, and all these guys, Verhaeghe, because they want to be healthy for a long run. So let's say they are healthy. What about the old chemistry? Because you brought in Brad Marchand. That whole time, Matthew Tkachuk wasn't even playing. This Panthers roster that you're going to see on the ice, Game 1, has never played together. It's a first time together Stanley Cup Game 1. And when was the last time we saw something like this? Last year with the Vegas Golden Knights. They traded for Hertl. Mark Stone was on long-term injured reserve. Magically, everybody was back Game 1. And they actually won Games 1 and 2. But that team had not played together for a long period of time. That roster, that full roster, 4 lines of forwards, 3 lines of defensemen. And they ended up losing the series, although I'll argue they played well enough to win the series. They lost in Game 7. But it is something to know. This team has not played together in this current iteration. These lines that you're going to see, albeit, in my opinion, they're doing the smartest thing possible. They have the classic Reinhart, Barkov, or Hagee line 1. They have Tkachuk playing with Bennett and Vasilevskiy, who's played together on line 2. And all they're doing is putting Brad Marchand in the Vladimir Tarasenko role of last year. That was the third line. Lundell, Luosterainen, Tarasenko. You got to think Marchand is a playoff upgrade to Tarasenko, if nothing else, even if he doesn't do what he typically does offensively. You want to know what he is? You know what he is. A rat.
Gnawing, eating rat.
In parentheses, S.
No rat.
Have a minimum of 1 rat and a minimum of 3 scumbags. I mean, it's guaranteed. We know they have the rat. And now you just got to ask yourself, is Matthew Tkachuk a rat? Is Sam Bennett a rat? Because I know all 3 of them are scumbags. They've self-proclaimed themselves as such in interviews and whatnot. As you can imagine, as you've seen how the playoffs are played, it's helpful to have people like that on your roster. Not only are they effective, not only do they wear other teams down, so by Game 6 and Game 7 you're getting diminished versions of quality players, they frustrate guys who are frustratable, like the most important player on the other team, Nikita Kucherov. The rat factor, if they're all just getting at the stars of the Tampa Bay Lightning and getting in their head and making life miserable for them, it will pay dividends the longer this series goes. And to me, what's going to decide this series for the Lightning? 2 things. Number 1, my biggest question about them before the year, which they answered emphatically. I lost the 100-point bet to Josh because they answered the one question I had of them. I always had faith in Vasilevskiy, and I did put an asterisk. He can if he goes off, he can get them there too. But once Stamkos left, I was very worried that the Tampa Bay power play, it was one of those power plays that I talk about, the perennial top 5 power plays that return the same 5 members and are going to be quality. What you see out of the Toronto Maple Leafs, although they switched Riley with Nyes, but what you see from that main group of 5, that top 5 power play every year, when you bring them back, it gives you a significant advantage. When you have to rebuild power play chemistry, that can go 2 different ways. Fortunately for them, they have the 2-time defending now leading scorer in the NHL and Nikita Kucherov, who's just a different level of animal when it comes to this power play. He will take the worst power play in the league, the New York Islanders, and he'll turn them into a top 10. That's just how nasty he is when working that right side. He's that good, and they're going to need to come through. They're going to need to come through for them because, like I said, this Panthers team 5-on-5 is going to make life miserable for you. But in the event this power play doesn't come through, my next biggest question for the Lightning is, can that secondary scoring come through? Can Brandon Hagel and Anthony Cirelli come through? These are little guys. They've been in many playoff series, but these are little guys. How are they going to fare when the scumbags, it sounds like a WWF pro, how you going to fare when the scumbags run wild on you? But it's not easy. It's not easy, and I'm interested to see if the Cirelli and Hagel line can get something going against this Panthers team. But what I think the Lightning need to do to win, I believe with home ice, they need to start the series 2-0 to win this series. If they split the first 2 games, I believe Florida wins this series. And why is that? Because Florida, as I said with one of those previous points, they're dealing with the first time Florida trying to build some chemistry. They're dealing with Matthew Tkachuk trying to get back up to the speed of things. So they're dealing with a Florida Panthers team who's going to be playing catch-up, trying to get to where they want to be. Many of those players rested many games. So that might take them a game or 2 to get back into the flow. And if they're a little slow starting and Tampa can just jump up on them 2-0. It will leave them a little leeway if Florida does regain their form and does start winning more games than not. At least Tampa only needs 2 more to secure the series victory. So I think they need to jump up 2-0. And also don't forget, Aaron Ekblad, their power play 1 defenseman, is suspended, I believe, for the first 2 games of the series. So their top power play defenseman is not going to be there. Matthew Tkachuk's first game back. Brad Marchand, first time in the lineup with Tkachuk. All sorts of questions about Florida in game 1. So if Tampa can jump up to that 2-0 lead, I like their chances to win. But my official pick for this series, I'm going with the Florida Panthers. Their style is simply built for the playoffs. They play playoff hockey all the time. My Panthers play playoffs all the time, playoffs all the time, playoffs all the time. Now, there are other teams that try to do that, like Carolina and whatnot, but they don't have the high-end talent that the Florida Panthers have. They do have that talent, though. Bobrovsky is always going to worry me. He truly is. I believe they're at a severe disadvantage at goaltending. But I think because they got that Tampa monkey off their back last year, and they waxed them in 5, and they scored a lot, I don't think that factor, I don't think he's going to be in their head as much as he was in previous seasons, but all that takes is 1 or 2 games where they can't score on him to flip back the other way. But I believe this Panthers team is just vicious, and I believe that Paul Maurice did the right thing. I think he knows how grueling that is. I don't even know. I bet you Barkov, Reinhart, these guys all could have played in this final 10-game stretch, but he knows what's required to win a Stanley Cup and strategically rested them as much as they did, and I think it's going to pay dividends for them. I think you're going to get a team with a lot of jump and a lot more energy than people think, and even if they don't win Game 1, I have faith in them to make up for what was lost in the earlier games later in the series to take this series down. So I'm going to go with the Florida Panthers over the Tampa Bay Lightning, but it's a damn shame. I would pick Tampa over anybody else. It's just the style of hockey that Florida plays. Every series you've seen, I essentially, for the most part, will take the better defensive team. Although, Tampa brought back McDonough, leads the league in plus-minus, and their defense is actually, man, and they know how to play that. What a great series is basically what I'm trying to say. But I'm going to pick Florida. That's what I have for you in this final series breakdown. I don't know what I'm going to be able to get to because I have to, travel back. At absolute worst case, I'll have the daily picks back on Wednesday. If not, maybe we'll do more Val Venus pool videos until then. I haven't decided. I don't know how much stuff I have, how much I can do here. But hope you guys enjoyed them. Let me know if you did. We'll see what I can do going forward with more series previews, if they give us gaps in between the series or if it just starts the very next day, because then, the gargoyles, they just want picks every single day. Anyway, if you appreciate me coming out here in the morning on Easter to throw you a Sunday video, do me a favor, return the kind gestures by liking this, commenting something down below. Let me know who you think's going to win the series and why. And then obviously, if you do want those daily sniffs, you do want those daily picks, anytime I can't make videos, they'll always be available on the Patreon. I put out a sheet yesterday. I wasn't planning on it for playoffs, ended up +8. So I'm going to keep putting out the sheet, despite the fact that playoff scoring is typically lower scoring games. We'll see what happens. Day 1 was a good one. We will see what day 2 brings. Hope to see you there. If not, I will see you for the next round of NHL Sniffs. Make sure you're subscribed so you know when that is. Take it easy.